Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I am Silas Grant, and you are tuned in to another edition of How Should I Introduce You? This concept was a concept that was birthed about 3 years ago, and I began recording introductory conversations between people that don't know each other, people that are in my network, in my universe, and most importantly, people that I felt like needed to know one another for the sake of synergy, working together, doing great things, taking ideas from concept to actual execution. And I'm proud to say that there are a number of people who I've introduced who have gone on to do great work together. That's not always the final destination for the relationship, but it's just good to know that people are connecting and doing good in the world. I've got two friends of mine, two folks that I've done work with professionally, but also two people I consider to be personal friends of mine. And so I wanted to, on this latest edition of How Should I Introduce You, introduce Rodney Wormsley and Kevin Scooty Hallums. So Rodney, Scooty, thank you guys for being here with me.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Cool.
Good evening, fellas. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So what I used to do, I used to ask people to give me like a bio, and then I would read the bio to start the conversation. But what I want to do is just really go right into it, give you guys each like 30 seconds to introduce yourself the way you would like to be introduced. So Rodney, I'll start with you.
All right. Good evening, fellas. My name is Rodney Wormsley. I am a educator, entrepreneur, born in Washington, D.C. All my family, most of my family is from Washington, D.C., but I am a Prince Georgian. I grew up in the state of Maryland, and I've supported youth for upwards of 25 years, from mentoring, teaching, volunteering to support social activities and various endeavors involving uplifting the community. And right now I serve as a high school principal at a quote unquote alternative school in Washington, D.C. So it's a pleasure to join you fellas tonight, and that's me.
Welcome again, man. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Right. Kevin Scooty Hallums, cultural architect, native Washingtonian. I am an artist that focuses on fashion, art, music, entertainment, and education. Also, I'm a former educator, and I'm also co-founder of Rock Creek Social Club and co-owner of Sandlot DC.
Good. Welcome, Scooty. Thank you for being here. I want to start right there, right? Because when we talk about introducing people, I know that both of you in different capacities, right? You know, you guys are multifaceted, but even down to the name, like today is the very first day I've ever called you Rodney. I always call you Principal Wormsley, no matter where I see you at, right? It's just Principal Wormsley. That's what I call you, right? And for you, Scooty, like so just to kind of go back real quick for folks that are watching, this is not the first time they've seen each other. Scooty and I do a walk every week on Tuesdays normally, and we end up walking past Rodney's school, right? And when we see him, the last couple of weeks, I've been telling Scooty, y'all guys need to sit and really talk, in more detail. But again, like when I first introduced you, Scooty, to him, I called you Kevin, right? And I kind of put a preface in there like Scooty. And again, I call you Principal Wormsley. So when I walk in the room with one of you all, right, there's a number of different ways in which I can introduce you all, but even down to the name, right? So, for you, Scooty, you've taken on that name, Uncle Scooty, but tell us a little bit about the I guess the difference between Scooty and Kevin and how you kind of came into that particular space.
There is really no difference between, one or the other. You know what I'm saying? I respond to both of them actively. I think that, when I was in the school system and I was moving up in the ranks, I wanted to be taken a little bit more serious, being, young Black male in the school system with an opportunity to flourish, I needed to take a stand, and I felt like I needed to separate the two. So that's where that kind of came from. But as I began to grow, I started to understand that, there is no one without the other. And a lot of the things that Scooty does outside of the school building are the things that I started implementing into the school, as far as my marketing background, promotions, and things of that nature. And then finally, when I, quote unquote, retired, or when I walked away from the school system full time, I just decided that, I was just going to go just with the Scooty name.
Yeah, what it's interesting, because it feels like when you really got into the full Scooty mode, even in the school system, ironically enough, it felt like that's when you really solidified your value, like just being Scooty in the school. I mean, you could have easily been Kevin Hallums, but to me, the flavor that you added by being Scooty really separated you. And so in some regards, even though Scooty's a nickname, it felt like that really solidified your professional career too.
Yeah, for sure, 120,000%. And I think that when it comes to, like my relationship, like with my students, my former students now or whatever, they kind of, like embrace this. So a lot of them who still, like follow me and are old enough, like to support my business, like that's essentially what they call me, which is kind of funny because, you spend so many years, like it's either, it was either Mr. K or it was Dean Hallums or whatever it was.
I remember that, Mr. K. I do remember that. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So if I rewind back for a second, that was also, a transition for me too, because when I got into the school system originally, my last name not being a very common last name, and I was working with elementary and middle school kids, it was hard for a lot of the kids to remember my name, and it was a lot easier for me to just go with Mr. K, and it was just something that just stuck. So the Dean Hallums didn't fully transition until I got to Washington Latin.
Yeah. So again, first time really calling you Rodney. I always call you Principal Wormsley, but tell me a little bit about the multifaceted perspectives that you hold. One is being Principal Wormsley, but also one is being Rodney. Like, what's the difference between those two?
Man, how much time we got? So first and foremost, I want to address that real quick. Silas, I have asked you on several occasions, man, to drop that to drop that moniker. I feel like you and I connect on multiple levels, and when it comes down to it, I believe that the principal title is one of prestige, and one that some folks we are in a society of categorizing and labeling people, right? And so sometimes titles make individuals. I do not follow. I do not follow that. I tell you, just going back, first of all, last name Wormsley. The movie Friday changed my life. My family, Big Worm is
Big Worm.
Worm, and like every type of worm tagline since '95 is what I've heard. And then I initially after college went into working in therapeutic group homes, and so it was Rodney, it was Worm. And then when I matriculated into or transitioned into the education world, these were just titles that were just kind of status quo. And then, moving into my role now. I think that, in terms of the leadership aspect and, like I said, again, a societal norm associated with various positions that title comes with that. But to be honest with you, as an entrepreneur and as a person of the community that I've supported various family members and, I've supported various grade levels in the school system. Going back, most people refer to me, my long-term friends refer to me as Raw Vendor. Since 2003, I started a vending machine company. I began with a gumball machine with gumballs, Skittles, and Mike and Ike's. And, that then expanded to full-size soda and snack machines. And at one point in time, I got up to about 40 soda and snack machines in the area. So I've since downsized, but, my entrepreneurial nature, most people just call me Rod, Worm, or Raw Vending. And so, like I said, the principal title, I do that from that's my 9 to 5, but I just prefer to be called Worm, Rod, Raw Vending, and I really feel like the entrepreneurial endeavor in me just represents what I'm about. I'm about community service. I'm about giving back. I showcase. I mentor folks. I've mentored folks pretty much all my adult life and some of my teenage life as well. So, I also wanted to touch on something else. I also have had another nickname, and that's Big Slim. In 2000, I founded a clothing company. So, Scooty, I can relate to you with fashion. I actually brought my brother in on endeavor with a clothing line, and Big Slim stood for believing in God and struggling to limit inconsistencies in me. So I had a whole self-empowerment movement. My logo was like an odd shaped person, but Big Slim was just about, loving yourself no matter what you physically look like. And so, like I said, it's several taglines that I go by, have gone by, but at the end of the day, I'm the same old me. But when I, step in the building and, the amount of responsibility that I have, that's just the professional title is just one that's, pretty much a societal norm.
Sure. And you talked a little bit about breaking the cultural norms of being locked into titles. And when you first started, you described some of the students that you work with, as folks who had alternative paths to your school. But you also, before we got started, you talked about, reconditioning people's minds and labeling them as alternative, but also shifting them over to at promise. And I thought that was a really, really good way to make a shift. So just real briefly, talk a little bit about what at promise means when it comes to our next generation.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, it was a term that I really did not did not become a fabric of what I do until later in my career. But I began in '99 working with at a level 6 and level 7 school, and that's a RTC, or a residential treatment center, for those viewers out there that's not familiar. But I pretty much worked with students who had IEPs and who had a title and a label of emotion. Back then it was emotional disturbance, but for the sake of being politically correct, emotional disabilities. So students that 6th to 12th graders that just really had a difficult time adjusting in life. And over that time, I believe that I don't know if I had a perspective that was conducive to really being a therapeutic worker, but over time with my schooling and my training, I did recognize that these titles that we give this population of young people, right, represents a negative connotation. And so what I would like to do, and what I do now, is I represent the students that I work with by kind of reversing that title or adding a positive connotation, positive SEL associated with what our students represent. They are at promise. We are charged with offering them opportunities, and anything less than that is uncivilized. It's just not adequate in my book. So I truly believe that the youth can and will impact our futures, will be taking care of us, and we're working with folks that are trendsetters, and life. This is a life-changing moment, life-changing period for them. So I just wanted to add that title to it.
Sure. Scooty, I know you've been removed from the schools every day for a number of years, right? But people see you in the street. In fact, you and I were walking one day and we saw one of your students, I think like a week ago. And so you're still in the eyes of many of them, Mr. K, the guy that they can still call on. Talk about the post-school experience of still being connected to students. And I know for a lot of people watching this, they've never been in a classroom. They've never been in a position where their career is directly connected to helping kids. But now you're in this space where you're not necessarily instructing in the classroom, but you're still impacting them from where you sit right now.
For sure. My transition was a slow transition. I left full time in 2014, and when I got to when I got to Latin, I was coming from Imagine Hope, and when I got to Latin, I took a number of kids from Hope with me over to Latin. So these are some people that I have been around at the point when I'm leaving for almost a decade, and because of that connection that I had with them and with their parents, I tried to figure out, like ways for me to still be able to focus on my full-time entrepreneur career, while still, like impacting, like the kids that I had, been devoted to over the course of the last however many years. So I stayed on and I coached for 3 more years. And then from the coaching aspect, then I started to volunteer and start doing speaking engagements at other schools just to continue to stay, like connected. And, during that time, 2014 all the way now, 2023, I'm going into 9 years being removed from the system full time. And, a lot of my kids have gotten older now. So now my connection with them is, adding more positive reinforcement with the things that I taught them when they were younger. But now, like now I'm living proof. Like now you see me like not just in a school building, but you see me outside of the building, and I'm still living by those, same rules and still living by those same morals. And then another thing is being able to offer them, like employment opportunities, which has been a huge thing. Mentorship, employment opportunities, and things of that nature. So I want to say, like that's, my new way of, like of connecting with them, or like continuing the work that I had already started.
Yeah, sure. We a few minutes ago when Rob was talking, he talked a bit about having that impact, and holding that title. But Scooty, I also heard you call yourself a cultural architect, and I never heard that term before. So give us a little bit about how you got to that point and what that title actually means.
So cultural architect is just, when I talk about the culture, I mean, I'm talking about the culture in DC. I'm talking about Black culture. I'm talking about, our creative economy, like here, like in the district. And then, how we're represented to the masses and other markets and other major cities. And what I try to do with that is I have a clear understanding that I'm not the champion of everybody, right? My moment is my moment, but then there are other people's that have moments. There are other people that have moments, and there are many ways for me to help, like within the background, whether it's doing the same thing that you're doing now, which and connecting myself and Rodney, me connecting, like people to the different, sponsors, the different producers, the different, artists, whoever. A lot of those things, like are happening, like in the background, where a lot of people don't even know that I'm responsible for those things. But it's the position that I've taken. I think that I've mentioned this, like to you before on our walks, and saying that I kind of became the OG that I never had. So when you talk about like architecting, it's like I can already see. I know where we come from. I can already see where we're going. I'm still relevant in my own right. So a lot of times, like when given the opportunity, I'm going to step in and give my expertise and things like that. And just the same as you in this conversation, when I feel like there are people that need to be brought together that I think will further the culture, it's my responsibility to make sure that they're connected.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Rod, being a school leader, right? The leader in the school that you serve, as a Black man, and I've seen you in the school, right? I've observed you on a number of days. I see the reaction that you get from the kids, from the staff. You're a magnetic, energetic force in your school. Talk about the fulfillment that you have now, growing from being a mentor to an instructor to now being, the head person of an entire school, like the fulfillment of being in that role.
Yeah, well, I have to, go back to my early schooling, and it was a rough one. From kindergarten to about the third grade, I had a speech impediment. I could barely talk.
Really?
I stuttered. I had a severe stuttering issue, and this, really limited some of my social development. Got into a lot of fights, at a young age, and I believe I began to craft like a mindset at a young age on, how people made me feel when I was younger, and how I ultimately would like to give back when I got older. I didn't aspire to go to school to, be a school leader, in high school, et cetera. I wanted to be a doctor. I was an athlete in high school. I wanted to go into sports medicine, be a doctor, et cetera. Organic chemistry had something else for me. Yeah, I didn't do well in that area, and I made a pivot. But so I moved into psychology, and ultimately I began to really, really want to fill out the education world, and I just matriculated in that career path. But I never ever forgot what it made me feel like to really have a speech issue. I remember teachers that I feel like put me in a position of strength. Sometimes they knew the issue that I might have with speaking, so they may only ask me a close-ended question. Other teachers, I don't think they paid attention to how the response of my classmates made me feel, and so that always stuck with me. So ultimately, my approach is that every individual, I want to have a connection with every individual that I come in contact with, and I want them to walk away knowing that I care about them, I'm concerned about their well-being, and I want to see them grow to to unlimited heights. And so that's the energy that I really want to give off. That's the energy I believe that I do a transfer when I'm interacting with folks, and that's students or adults, but mainly, speaking from as a school leader, I'm motivating adults, and I'm trying to position adults for, I believe more valuable, more valuable roles. And then with students, I think that students are like a ball of clay, right? I'm helping to mold who they are, as young adults, and walk out into this world that's not so nice. So again, my past has shaped how I view education, how I view relationships, and really has molded me into the person I am.
Sure. And definitely, I applaud you for being steadfast and doing what it took to be able to get past that impairment. Because if you had not told me, I would have never known that. And I think it takes a lot of courage to face that head on. And then now you're a living witness that you can go from having a speech impediment to being a leader where every day, all day, your job is to speak in front of people. So that's really a great turnaround story that you shared with us. I appreciate that. Scooty, real quick, with respect to you transitioning out of education, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a connector, becoming a cultural architect, this week is the 3-year anniversary of the quarantine. I think it was March 13th when we were mandated to quarantine back in 2020. That had to be a scary time for you because it was a scary time for all of us, right? But you were out there completely on your own. You have been known for activating spaces, bringing people together, and now, we're getting this global mandate not to get together. So as we look back on the 3 years since that mandate to quarantine, how has your life changed? And you talked about creativity. Talk about some of the creative ways that you had to stay relevant during that period.
The pandemic, obviously it came out of nowhere for me and for everybody else. And, there was a huge adjustment that needed to be made, or pivot that needed to be made. And, one thing that I will say is that I was a lot more fortunate than most people. At that point, we had already opened up Sandlot. And while everybody else was trying to figure out how to get outside, we were already outside. And it was actually the tipping point for our business because of the pandemic. That is the reason why we were able to grow as fast as we have, just because the city was putting, a lot of emphasis on, dining outside, and putting a lot of emphasis on trying to keep, a lot of these retail spaces and restaurants and bars and things like that open. And like I said, we already had the infrastructure there. It was really just, like once people were comfortable and able to come outside, we just made sure that we dotted our I's and crossed all T's to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to do to making Sandlot a safe space. As far as some of my other ventures and other businesses through Rock Creek, obviously like that was affected, with, Marvin being, like one of our home bases on 14th and U, and them closing, and a lot of our events, going through that building, there was a huge, like financial hit. So we started putting a lot of focus in on digital programs and things of that nature, and seeing how we can engage with people without them having to leave their home. There was a huge learning curve, and a lot of the ideas, once they started coming out, once one person did it, then it just became like something that was kind of redundant. So trying to figure out like the next thing, what platform are we using? Are we using Zoom? Are we using Twitch? Are we using Instagram Live? Are we using Facebook Live? Like, what are we doing? Like all of these things, like what happening, like all at once. And, I'm just thankful that, we were able to figure it out. And, we're still here to talk about it today, because a lot of, like our peers who started, like in the game with us, like they're not around anymore.
Yeah. So you mentioned Sandlot, and I was going to bring that up specifically a little later on, but for Rod and for the folks who are listening that may not be aware of that concept, I think it's a really interesting concept. So I want you to go a little more detail about what Sandlot is.
So Sandlot was actually a concept that came to my mind in the form of an activation. When one of my previous clothing lines, Premium, we were doing a collaboration with Under Armour, which I see you got your Under Armour on right there. We were doing a collaboration with Under Armour for MLB All-Star in DC. And I never played baseball growing up. Don't really know a lot about the game, other than, what I see on Sports Center. So trying to figure out a concept, like for that activation was hard. And so what I did was I got in my bag. I started watching a bunch of different movies that I loved as a kid, and Sandlot was one of them. And, what I realized is that movie wasn't even about baseball. It was really about, just a group of kids that would come together and talk about what was going on during life at that time. And the Sandlot was just a place that they would go. And I thought the concept was so amazing, and it spoke to, who I was and what my team was at the time. And my longtime friend and business partner, Ian Callender, he was helping me with that project. And at this point, we were always working together, but two separate businesses. We had never had one entity which we both owned. And he's helped me with this concept. MLB comes back and say that they don't want the concept. They just want the clothes. And I call Ian, I tell him, I say, hey, they don't want the concept. We're just going to parking lot it, until another time. And, 3 weeks later, he called me and said that, listen, I really don't think that Sandlot idea was an activation. I think it was an actual space, a space that culturally we need. And I said, okay, let's try to figure that out. And we did. And we created an outdoor experience that embraced, like art and music and vibes and culture and, a place, that was safe for everybody to come to. And we opened up our doors for the first time in 2019 in Southwest, Half Street, literally at the end of the block from the East Side, Old Lime, for any native Washingtonians. Literally, like no money in the bank. And we figured out how to fund this idea and this concept by underwriting most of our costs. And, we went from one space to now we have 4 active spaces working on 5 and 6 throughout the city, Virginia, and then hopefully going into Maryland.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, first of all, congratulations on the expansion. It's been a beautiful thing to see from a not so far distance, right? Obviously, we talk periodically about it, but to witness it from somewhat of a distance has been really good to see you all grow that. But ironically enough, it seems like Sandlot has been a destination space, in particular for educators, right? You see a lot of teachers that go out there and hang out. And I know, again, you guys started in 19 and then 20, going back to the COVID conversation, was really at the height of the COVID situation with the quarantine. So Rod, for you, talk a bit about the techniques that you had to implement to keep students engaged and also keep morale up during that period.
Yeah, I'm just very impressed with you, Scooty. Just listening to your story about perseverance, man. Because it was tough for us, but at the end of the day, if you had you as a small business owner, like you had to make a way, you had to make your own way. So like, kudos to you, shout out to you for that.
Thank you.
I feel like March 13th. You took me back 3 years ago. That was a very mysterious, scary space for us, unprecedented, I know for us all, but definitely in the world of education, it's definitely as a school leader, one of the toughest times in my life, one of the first times most of my friends and family know that I have a comment and pretty much a stance on everything. And this was one of the first times I was scared because I don't like to freeze because freezing is unproductive to me. But like I said, that right there was it was tough. But, trying to navigate leading others through a unfamiliar space when you don't feel as comfortable, somebody really needs to write a book on that, if it's not already a book on that. But that I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about the closest people to me. I learned about my community, my school community. But everything from technology assignments and converting academic material to online learning spaces, and watching many of my students struggle because of technology gaps, and that I witnessed firsthand the technology divide, right? Associated with, here you think that this piece of equipment, this unit, which is supposed to bridge the gap, was a valuable tool, and it was in some cases. But I've learned, I was able to see firsthand or recognize how important that human touch is. That human connection. Someone being in the space to be able to pat your back and telling you it's okay as they explain the concept or shared information with you. I mean, that was huge. But, in that time, like I said, again, there was so much to learn about, from PPE protocols to technology distribution to helping adults manage their emotions, their feelings about what was next. We had various spaces where I tried to keep us connected as we began to, do early integration, bringing folks back, and a lot of people were uneasy about it. So it was all about trying to, make it equitable for those who were returning and those who didn't want to return. And so, the main thing I can say is that, I was thankful that I did have, steady income coming in. That wasn't a worry for me. But, at the same time too, just many worrisome nights, just, going to sleep thinking about what was next, where school's going to collapse, right? Was it going to be a need for in-house learning institutions, in-person? Was in-person learning going to be a thing of the past? And it was very difficult, to say the least. So the one thing I can say I learned about myself was about grit, determination, perseverance, and planning, right? Proper planning. I really feel like I learned a lot about organization for myself, about lining up my moves, being able to be one. As a school leader, you always have to be 2-3 steps ahead of your community, and you have to think about the questions along with the solutions that no one may be exploring. So I can definitely tell you it was a very tough time. In some respects, there was a population of my school that never came back, right? And I work with students who were referred to us because they're off track for graduation. So, many of my students have full-time, part-time jobs. They're caretakers. They, some have neighborhood violence. They have barriers why they don't want to come to school. So now adding, a virus that's a international crisis, pandemic, and then an endemic, it was scary for a lot of folks. So, to this day, I've been able to adopt a set of leadership practices that have carried me through.
Sure. And I'm sure that those leadership practices bleed over into what you've got going on outside of school, which is where I want to take the conversation for a moment. Raw vending, you've been an entrepreneur in that space, like you said, for 2 decades or more. Talk about that. And I want you to talk about it because I know on other platforms online, we've seen a number of people talk about and be interviewed about the vending space and how quietly there are really some lucrative opportunities there. So talk about your experience in that space, how you got into it and how you've grown in that space.
Right, man. So thanks for that. So initially I was a teacher, that I was a 7th grade teacher teaching pre-algebra. And I was looking for, ways to make additional income, because that a teacher salary in the county I was working, I mean, it was peanuts, right, compared to what we were asked to do. But I initially took on a moonlighting job working on the psychiatric ward at a nearby hospital. I was at Southern Maryland Hospital, and it was paying the bills, but I just had, my dreams were in orbit, right? I just had so many. I was just thinking on a grandiose scale. My clothing line, my brother and I, it didn't pan out. We just didn't have enough capital to sustain, what we were doing. And so I have to credit this. I have to credit my father. My father actually asked the family to come down to a location in Temple Hills, and it was a storefront. And he said, "Hey, I'm about to invest in this spot here, and I appreciate you all's blessing." And so, we took down some of the cardboard and the paper off the windows, and it was actually And it was a laundromat. So my father invested in a laundromat. And I remember one of the first questions I asked him was, what are you going to do about people that want a snack in here? And he said, you're on it. So I actually have to credit my dad for, introducing me to an idea that I just expounded upon. But man, I had literally a Discover credit card and about $340 in my bank account. And, I began to call around at that time, searching the www World Wide Web. And I stumbled across a company in Buffalo, New York. They had an 800 number. And I pretty much, I called around, inquiring about the vending machine business. And a guy answered the phone, talked to me for about an hour to an hour and a half. And that's the guy I went with, and I spent, let me see, I think I spent $1,500 for a soda machine and a snack machine. So that was at $3,000. It was about $500 to ship them down here from Buffalo. And I spent probably about $1,000 on my inventory. At that time, Sam's Club that was in Landover, Maryland. So I was up and running. I had a Ford Crown Victoria, and my vehicle was touching the ground because I had it packed down with product. But like I said, man, I had a gumball machine. I think I prefaced that earlier. I had a gumball machine, and now I had 2 full-size vending machines. And man, I just the bug bit me. I learned so much about the business through trial and error. I learned how to operate them, which is, a whole lot easier now, thinking about it as I describe it to other people. And that's where Raw Vendor was born. I was a sole proprietor for several years, and then I formed the LLC. But it's just been an amazing ride, just some of the life lessons that I've learned. But in a nutshell, without taking up too much time, that's how I began. That's how I've pretty much flourished. And as I began to matriculate throughout my career, I realized that I never really had an employee until my son was born in 2010. And, at a young age, I've been having him working, but that's how he earns his allowance. But I've never had another employee per se. And, I began to downsize because it was just too much for me. Sure. But like I said, I pretty much have accounts or memberships with pretty much all the wholesale clubs in the area. And I met a lot of amazing people, and preferably 80% of my machines are at senior living buildings. So I service and support the seniors, man. And that's my population there. I have formed so many great relationships with individuals that, have talked to me, given me great advice. And I've also given them awesome discounts in the process of servicing them. So vending is my thing. I hope to pass it along to my son. Hopefully he has vending in his mindset, and his future, because I do for him. So, that's pretty much how I got started. And actually in 2019, my father sold the business, but I've still kept the dream alive with vending.
Sure. Scooty, along those lines, right? As a person who, you were in a leadership role in the school, but never a principal, what do you think about the idea of principals or head leaders of schools being invested in the outside life of the other faculty, right? And I'm asking that because, in Rod's situation, he's the head of a school, but he also has other things happening outside of school. Have you ever experienced a situation where a leader has been invested in what you have going on outside of the work you do in the school, where they really care enough and are concerned enough about your dreams beyond just the instruction inside of school?
I think, it's a twofold thing. I think that there was concern as it relates to the benefits of the school, whether it be funding or my relationships, like with people and getting them to come in and speak. We did the 101 Men of Hope, 101 Women of Hope, not only in my school, but in several other schools throughout the area. And then there is a side, when I got to Latin, when I told them that I wasn't returning, and they said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to run my businesses full time. And they said, you have businesses? I was like, yeah, several. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, like there was a disconnect, like on one side, and on the other side, like there was full transparency. So I've seen both. Do I think that it's important? I think that it's important, as it relates to the kids and the things that are going to benefit, like the kids. And then on the other hand, I think that there is a sense of, when you want some sort of separation, when you leave the building, like you need to be, that's your personal time, you know what I mean? And that's your personal space. I know Rodney can attest to this, being an educator, and being an educator in an administrative position, it's a whirlwind. You are responsible for 400 to 500 kids, right? You're responsible for 25, 30, almost 40, staff members. All the kids that you service, you're responsible or responsible for having some sort of dialogue, relationship, or whatever, with all of those parents, caregivers, grandma, auntie, uncle, and all of those, like those things. So I think that, when you walk out of that building, you kind of need a sense of relaxation and decompression. So I would always, think, and I'll say this now, I think you pick and choose, like, the things that you want to share, or open yourself up to, as far as opportunities in relation to building bridges with, like your work persona and who you are there and what your role and your responsibility is. And, and then what happens outside of the school.
Sure.
That's just, like that's my personal opinion.
Sure. I saw you create what I consider to be a perfect balance of it when you had the 100 Men of Hope events and the 101 Women of Hope events. So for Rodney's benefit and for the benefit of the audience, talk about that concept, because I was there to witness a number of those. They were really effective with you bringing in people from your personal life to come in and help the schools.
So when I was at Imagine Hope, moving into a leadership position, I was given an amazing opportunity to use a lot of my creativity to start programs that I felt were necessary, for the growth and the development of our students. And my outside connections allowed me to be able to fund, like these programs through the school. And one day, I'm doing my regular, like after school job. I worked before care. I was administrator during the day, and then I worked the aftercare and I worked the late room. So I'm there at the school from 7 to 7 every single day, and Silas knows that. And a parent came up to me as I was standing outside, and I was having a conversation about behavior issues with one of her children. And her response was, he needs you, and I looked at her, I said, I'm not his daddy. You know what I mean? And And, you know, right then and there, I went to my social media and I said, you know, I could get 100 or 200 of y'all to come to the club if I was having a party. I'd love to see if I could get 100 or 200 of y'all to come to my school and volunteer for a day. And, you know, once again, my brother, my business partner, Ian, saw that tweet and immediately called me and said, that's a plan of action. We need to put those wheels in motion. And so with Ian, with Levan, who's another friend of ours, Heben, my best friend, and my friend Patrice, the five of us became the admin for this thought, and helping to bring it to fruition. And my school that I was already working at, which was Imagine Hope, just became the crash test dummy to see if we could really, you know, make this thing happen. And if all went well, then there was a conversation about us taking it to other schools. You know, of course it went well just because of the freedom that I had within the building. And, you know, and we had tons of people that once the bat signal went up, you know, there were so many people that were more than willing to give, you know what I'm saying, like themselves, whether it be in person, whether it be in kind, whether it was monetary, whatever it was, you know, it became, you know what I'm saying, like just a snowball, you know what I mean, that just kept on going. And, you know, and it was just something that, you know what I'm saying, I thought was amazing. And to speak to, you know what I'm saying, like your point, because as you were asking the question, I was thinking in my mind, I think that no matter where I am and what I'm doing, whether I'm in the school and whether I'm got my educator hat on, or whether I'm out in the streets and I got my Scooty hat on or whatever, I think that my morals, my beliefs, and who I am as a person is always completely consistent. So I never get into, you know, having to differentiate, you know what I'm saying, like in different places. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm always just me, the same person that I am in that school building. I'm the same person, you know what I'm saying, like in the street. I may speak with a different language, and I may articulate myself, you know what I'm saying, like different, but the message is always the same.
Good. You know, quick story, Rod, for your sake. So the way Scooty and Ian and those folks, Patrice, the way they had it set up was that you would come into the building, whatever building it was that day that they activated, 100 Black men, right? Some of them would be painting the school, some of them would be gardening in the back, some would be in the classrooms talking about their careers. Like they took over the school. And I've been to like maybe 3, if not 4 or 5 of them. So there was one story at Oxon Hill Middle, and I came late. I got out there, everybody had already gotten their assignments, and I saw Ian. I think it was Ian. And Ian said, "You're going to go to the trailer." And the trailer was where the students who had got in trouble for the day or the previous day were being educated, right? So I walk across the parking lot.
It was an in-school suspension incubator.
Yep, that's it. That's the perfect way to describe it. So I walk across to this trailer / incubator, and I'm trying to get in the door. I knock on the door, and lo and behold, my cousin's son answers the door, right? So I remember this little boy when he was born, right? And he answers the door, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, "What are you doing in here?" First of all, I didn't know you went to this school, but what are you doing in here? And he tells me that he got into an argument with a young girl. And so I'm listening to him, and I'm basically drilling him, right? Like, tell me what happened. So then he points the girl out. I make her come over. We talk about it. And then all of a sudden, I just say, you know what? We're going to have a court session right now. So I took the whiteboard and a marker, and I let one of the kids be a judge. I let one of the kids be a prosecutor. I let one of the kids be his lawyer, defense lawyer. And we had court. And we broke down the situation, what happened. And it was the funniest thing because for me, it was impromptu. I don't know where that idea came from, but we did it. We ended up having some fun in the process, but we were able to really relay a message of decisions and how decisions impact people. And I bring that up because the three of us do community work, and I'm always the first to say, you know, when you want to do this work, you got to start with your family and friends. And so I'll never forget that concept, because every time I think about it, I think about opening that door and seeing my cousin's son and me being able to have that interaction with him and to be able to change his mindset. And that's what the power of that program really was. And Scooty, I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I would love to see it activated again, because we need that in this time that we're in right now.
Done. Say less.
That's it. That's it. All right. Well, we might have to do it at Rod's school. That might
I
be
need that. I need that.
That makes it even easier.
Yeah. So I know we've been on for a while, and you know, I want to be able to transition to the end of the conversation for now, because we got a soft commitment to make this thing happen at your school, Rod. But I want to end it by asking the both of you about partnerships, right? Now that we're talking about this 100 Men of Hope, 101 Women of Hope sort of thing. From your respective perspectives, right? For you, Rod, in the school as a school leader every day, for you, Scooty, in business, I want to ask each of you from your perspectives, how can the community, and specifically the business community, help out in the schools, right? So for you, Scooty, as a business owner, what do you think the business community could be doing more of? And for you as a principal, Rod, what do you think they should be doing more of to help you guys really get these kids up to speed?
Well, I think that you know, one of the biggest issues to me is I feel like, you know what I'm saying, like that kids don't understand, or students don't understand the options that they have, right? I think that, like, when I've been to enough schools and I've been in enough classrooms to know, if you walk into a classroom, especially in this particular area, and you ask, you know what I'm saying, kids if they have any outlook on what they want to do when they grow up. And a lot of them are going, a lot of the boys are going to, you know what I'm saying, tend to go towards sports. They're going to basketball and football. And I think that, you know, while that's great, and, you know what I'm saying, we've seen, you know what I'm saying, like some amazing stories, you know what I'm saying, like from start to finish, and some people that have had amazing careers, but we also know there are only 5,000 people, you know what I'm saying, like in the history of, you know what I'm saying, like the NBA. And there are billions of kids that, you know what I'm saying, have aspirations and dreams to play. How can we get these kids and these students to understand, you know what I'm saying, like there are so many other jobs that are available, you know, within a career or within that organization, that you can actually make more money and you have a longer lasting career, less strenuous and everything. That's at the top. And then, you know what I'm saying, like breaking, you know what I'm saying, like things all the way down to, you know, there's so many different jobs, you know what I'm saying, like at restaurants. There are so many, you know what I'm saying, like jobs when within, you know what I'm saying, like within retail clothing stores and things like that, and the knowledge that you can gain from those. I just believe that these kids just don't have the options. And a lot of, you know, of different businesses, they're like, you know, we can't find really good people to hire. And I feel like it's because we're not pouring into, you know what I'm saying, like into our communities early on, and prepping and preparing. Rodney used that word, you know, preparing you know, these kids for the next level. You know, if sports isn't an option, if college isn't an option, we come from a place where there were so many vocational schools and everything. We've gotten away from that. So the skills are just lacking. So these businesses, if they took the time to, you know what I'm saying, like to invest, I think that, you know what I'm saying, like you can start fostering a lot of relationships, and you can start building a lot of these kids, you know, from high school up.
Yep. All right, Rod, how about you? What do you think we should be doing?
All right, so look, Scooty, I mean, I'm piggyback off you. What I really think that exposure, the expose series, you know, is something that I can be supportive with. A lot of our students have, like, you know, and around the way, like a very limited scope of the world, right? And so one of the things that I believe in is, you know, exposing students to, you know, other cultures, other areas outside of their hometown, because I believe that I've seen firsthand what that could do. So that also could be supported in the area of mentoring, job shadowing, and internship experiences. I believe that, you know, what businesses could do would really, those aspects of involvement could really support and like entertain mindset, the growth of a mindset, right? Because a lot of our students have a fixed mindset as to what they think is, you know, what they think their aptitude is, right? And some of it is, you know, we work with DC students, right? So they just think that the DC is dope, right? But it's a world outside of DC too. And so in terms of, you know, just expanding their horizons, I really feel like, you know, businesses could support us by helping to sponsor, you know, like local trips. Like I remember as an 8th grade teacher back in 2009, it meant the world to our students. The end of year trip, we took a student to see a Broadway play, right? They would, you know, took them to Times Square. So man, I just can't describe the looks on their faces just to be in the Big Apple, you know, somewhere they see on TV all the time, et cetera, et cetera. And they were talking about it like they were in a place, you know, they were talking about like they were just in like a movie for the most part. So I was just saying that I believe exposure is the key. And I believe businesses can help bridge the gap with like growing our student aptitude, their outlook on life, and their mindset.
All right, well, there it is. I do thank the both of you guys for joining us on this latest edition of How Should I Introduce You. And I know we'll be seeing each other more often because around 10:15 a.m. we'll be circling back toward the end of that walk. Scooty, we'll be seeing Rod at that door, welcoming in those students of promise, man. So thank you guys again for being on. And we're gonna definitely pull off that event to be able to support the school, Rod. And yeah, for those that are watching, this is another edition of How Should I Introduce You. We want to continue connecting people and connecting people that are doing great things for the world. So with that, take care. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, sir.